I'll start off broad. So of everything, all the big set pieces you had to film for the movie, going into production, which did you think would be the most challenging to actually execute? And then ultimately, was that indeed the toughest thing to shoot, or did something else kind of catch you by surprise during production?
I think the blood elevator was always the one that that was kind of freaking me out, because I knew about the logistics of how it could practically work and the volume of blood that we needed to create and the characters that I needed to put in that space. So that was always a challenging one, and it proved to be, heartbreaking along the way. In the best, I suppose, possible, the best way we could approach it was to cross our fingers, but it was just not easy. We kept on having to return to it and get more and figure out other technical ways and build a variety of different, like a Lego set elevator that could come apart in different ways, and build special ways of having pieces of blood because you couldn't fill the whole place. And it was just a lot of technique, and it was always that thing. Like, there was never a production meeting that the blood elevator didn't come up, and it's like, do we really have to talk about this again? But it was, that was a big, big challenge, and I knew it would be. And then there's a big bad in the movie towards the end, which is
say it.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm going to bring it up eventually anyway.
There is the Marauder, and the actual, I wanted it to be as practical as I could make it, and you can't really remove people's organs for real to create space for other people to crawl through their bodies. So that was something that was also incredibly, incredibly challenging. We had to pull every trick possible to bring that monster onto the screen. Like, everything I could ever think of that you would do was applied. And I always knew that would be tough as well. And it was.
I'll go directly to the Marauder next, and I have like a million questions about this creature. First, I guess just from a story perspective, why is that boss level deadite? What happens to a deadite that makes it more powerful when they combine like that?
Yeah, I think if you look and if you kind of follow the book and the movie as it points out these different things that take place, or these different deadites that come into the world. The Marauder's actually planted really early on in the movie. The first time the kids are meddling with the book, you see that picture. To me, it's something that's happened before and will happen again, and it depends on the circumstances. What I love about the evil force is that it's undestroyable. But at a deeper level with this movie, it's the worst version of family you could imagine. It's like if you take the character of Beth, right, who's someone that's unsure if she wants to be a mother and maybe sees the danger of the shackles of that. And then you take her and she's presented with the all-encompassing smothering. It's like, imagine that thing hugging you. It would be like the worst hug in the world. It would wrap everything around you. So for me, it wasn't just a case of making something creepy. And it was also that idea for, say, a parent. They think, some people might say, I'll have kids because someone will look after me when I'm older. They'll pick me up when I fall down. So when Ellie loses an arm and a leg and can't go after anybody, her kids come along and help her out. And I always thought that was really sinister, but it was something that I hit on really early on. And I wanted there to be something that was another level of spectacle, another level of terror towards the end of the story. And the Marauder showed its many faces to me quite early.
Great success with that. All right, now what about production and effects? What does something like that look like on set during filming versus what's added in post? What's at the core of it on set?
It was multiple layers to create it. So all of the actors that formed the Marauder played a real part in that and had to crawl and get into awkward positions and be joined to another actor at the same time. Then there was also stunt doubles that could double for them, that could actually move faster in the suit. There is a suit that has been worn by that cast. And then there's some clever digital manipulation to knit together some certain elements of it. And then we had to use motion control cameras to do multiple passes of that thing. So the stunts would do a pass. One or two actors might do a pass tethered together. One might do it on their own. So it took about a day per Marauder shot almost in the movie. It ate up a hell of a lot of time. And it was, something that you're really crossing your fingers with. I believed in the vision and the idea, but it was technically really challenging. But I think when you see it on screen, it's quite a spectacular monster, and it's something that we maybe haven't seen like quite like it before.
Can confirm. I want to see B-roll of that so badly.
Have much of it.
So badly. I can't wait. I want to go to something that Rob had brought up during the premiere the other night. He mentioned that at a point there was a COVID shutdown, and it gave you the opportunity to, like, you know, sit and think about what you had and what you were going to make going forward. So I guess like a complicated two-parter on that.
Yeah.
When you had that break to reflect on what you had already shot, is there anything that you decided to go back to and bolster for any particular reason? But then also for everything that still lay ahead for you guys, what is something that changed because you had a moment to think it through and maybe refine the plan even more?
Well, it's back to the Marauder, because we shot the movie in chronological order. So
cool.
We were in the trenches with the beast, and, you know, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, someone's like, oh, there's COVID in New Zealand. By 6 o'clock, set shut down. By 8 o'clock that evening, we're being told we're shut down for 2 weeks, which extended into 8. So I spent that time working on the finale of the movie. So I got my storyboard artist re-engaged with me. I took footage, redesigned shots, cut them in, and created an animatic for the end of the movie that I then brought back onto set. And I think it improved, because I think that final 10 minutes downstairs in that basement is quite a high point in the story. It's both actiony and terrifying, and it's got emotion and it's got fear. But in a weird way, it definitely gave me the time to reflect. But I never went back and shot anything else. That was it. We just went in. Maybe there was, like, the second unit might have gone and got a couple of other close-up pickup things, but all focus was on finishing the movie, because that was our exit point at that stage.
So cool you got to shoot in sequence. I feel like that is a luxury most sets don't have. And here I could see how it could come in handy big time. I wanted to talk about the 3 Necronomicons, because I know you've mentioned that each one has a different personality. So, you know, just in your mind, for your own headcanon right now, can you give us kind of like the 101 of each book and what makes it different in terms of its personality?
Well, yeah, I think Sam's book was the original, right? And there was something very basic, like as in the very beginnings and the origins of what it was. And then Fede's book, I think, showed a certain brutality in kind of the way it's designed and the way it's looked. And it had a methodology behind it also, in terms of giving a guidance to the, you know, the amount of innocence that's taken and how that might bring rise to something into the world. This book to me is one that has a certain amount of character and a little bit of life to it, in the sense that it actually activates, it moves, it drinks a little bit of blood. And I think each one of the books, I kind of look at them almost like Gospels in the Bible. It's like the same story told slightly different way by a different person. And who knows, maybe there's a 4th book out there.
Ooh, I like that.
Maybe it's an inverse of everything we know.
Here's another thing that I've kind of made up in my own head. It might not be real at all, but is there any situation where, like, if the books come together, they form the Marauder version, but like of a book?
We discussed that for fun on set. I think it's possible, because all of these books exist in the same world. To me, there is a timeline that's linear from Sam's first story all the way through to this. It's just happened to different people in different places with different books.
I have so many questions because I'm obsessed with Ash vs. Evil Dead. Did you ever consider, or will you consider, maybe incorporating more elements of that show into the film franchise?
I love the show. I adore the show. It's fantastic. But I intentionally never used it as a touch point for this, because there's so much in it. I would have drowned, if you know what I mean. And I think there is a bit of a separation with that TV story that takes place and the movies. I was more interested in the canon of the movies when I was making Evil Dead Rise.
Makes sense. I'm greedy. I want every corner of my Evil Dead franchise always. I was reading another quote that you had given where you said something like, you know, you were focused on making one good movie, but there were like 4 different like unexplored corners that could lead to future stories within what you have created here. I guess one would be Beth and Cassie getting away. Another would be the Necronomicon being left behind. Can you hint at what the other 2 are? Yeah,
well, we've also got what happens out at the lake, because as you look at this story, the beginning that you see is actually the end of the movie, right? So what happens out at that lake could continue. Like, fresh people could show up at that cabin not knowing the carnage that just took place there. So that's another pathway that interests me. And then one that I really like is the story of what happened with the priests back in the past. One priest versus 100 Deadites. I'd like to see that movie.
All right, here's my last selfish question, because you kind of like made this dare on Twitter, and now I wanted to figure it out. Is Bruce Campbell one of the priests? The voice?
Bruce Campbell is a voice in that section of the movie. And someone hooked it and got me last night on stage. They quoted the exact line, so they won the $50.
I love it.
I got to find them somewhere later on and Give them what they deserve.
I hate that I have to leave you right now, but you got more celebrating to do. Congratulations.
Thank you, Perry.
And thank you for yet another great installment of one of my favorite horror franchises out there.